Hi, everybody. We will get started in just a couple minutes. I'm getting our YouTube stream together. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. For your patience as I get our YouTube stream up. I feel like every time we have a meeting, I'll get a little bit better at it and we'll eventually have no wait time.
Melissa, this is Christina. I am on. Do you want me to share the PowerPoint from my screen or?
Yeah, great.
Okay.
Let me stop sharing mine.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, I think we can get started. Thanks for joining us today for this special called board meeting in February. I want to start by calling attendance to make sure that we have a quorum. So if you'll just respond, board members, by saying here. Linda Rosca.
Here.
Rodney Andrews.
Here.
Kathy Horn.
Here.
Celeste Alexander.
Here.
Adam Leonard.
Here.
Sarah Rispe. And Teresa Orabazo.
Here.
Thank you all. Just a reminder for public meeting, to follow public meetings rules, board members, please have your camera on as we talk in our meeting room here at the coordinating board. We have you on display for the public if they come in. So appreciate that. All right, we can move to agenda item number 2. Public testimony. We do not have any public testimony scheduled, so we can actually move on to agenda item 3, consideration and possible action to approve additional data requests. So first we have data request 1, UTA 099, impact analysis of local scholarship dollars, innovating financial incentives for college readiness, enrollment, and completion. Do we have any comments or questions from our board members? All right. Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the additional data request for UT Austin 099?
This is Kathy. I move to approve.
I second. Ron Andrews.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, moving on to data 2. UTA 129, measuring the consequences of justice involvement. Do we have any questions or comments from the board for this one? I did have a question. I wasn't sure if I saw the exact years that were being requested for data. Oh, hi, Sarah. Thank you for joining us. Good to have you. Just missing
I
it.
am on that project, and my colleague submitted the form, and I don't know that he put years on there, but the whole universe, because the other data we have spans 1990 to 2017. So all available years is, I think, what he requested.
Okay, I think we just need to get that added to this form. Any other questions or comments about it? That was the only thing I saw for documentation. All right, then is there a motion to approve this additional data request for UTA 129 with the amended years for the data sets?
This is Adam. I motion to approve.
Do you have a second?
I second. This is Celeste.
Right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you. So that's all we had for agenda item 3. Moving on to regular research proposals. So proposal 1, UTA 179, can better information reduce college undermatch, future earnings, value added as an imperfectly observed attribute? Do we have any researchers here to give us any background on this project?
Yes.
Yeah, this is my project. Thank you for the opportunity. Can everyone hear me all right? If so, I'll get started. So the goal of this project is to address the gaps between students of disadvantaged backgrounds. So students from parents with less family education, less family income, underrepresented racial and ethnic minorities. They matriculate at less selective colleges, they graduate at lower rates, they tend to earn lower income. This project puts forward a relatively underexplored explanation for that channel, that when choosing a college to attend to, there are observed attributes like graduation rate and average SAT score, but there are also unobserved attributes like the treatment effect of one college versus another on earnings. So I will estimate demand for across colleges, and attempting to explore the role of information as something that's specifically modeled. And then there's another component of looking at suggestive evidence of things that shift information, like do students like living near a university, having alumni that attended a certain university. So the project overall is focused on long run outcomes and the role of information about college quality.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the board for the researchers? I had one quick note. As I look through my notes. This may not be an issue because you are using, it looks like you're using older cohorts, but just a note, the CVM OOB, which it looks like you'll be using to create the peer effects for parent education and income. Starting after fiscal year 2019, the parental education question was no longer collected. But it seems like you're likely using cohorts that this would be okay for, but just so you know.
Thank you. Yeah, I believe I only requested through 2019.
Great. All right, any other questions, comments? All right. Do I have a motion to approve proposal 1, UT Austin 179?
This
With
is Rod.
including remote access. Sorry, I want to make sure we get that in this time.
This is Rodney Andrews. I move to approve the proposal with remote access.
Do I have a second?
This is Teresa. I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Moving on to proposal 2. UT Austin 180, effects of local population turnover on Texas school bonds and local communities. Do we have a researcher here to discuss this project?
Yeah, I'm here.
Great, welcome.
Hi. So thank you all for being here and your time. Today we're requesting remote access to ERC data with the project titled Effective Local Population Turnover on Texas School Bonds and Local Communities. So the economic question we have is that we want to look at to what extent having more short-term focused local residents, which we plan to proxy by population turnover, affect school district financing and local community through its influence on bond elections. And we see this as in the following framework. So because benefits of the school infrastructure projects tend to be realized in the long term, but costs through, say, paying proper taxes are borne right away. So we see some discrepancy or mismatch in timing of receiving benefits and paying associated costs. So residents may vote in the bond elections, taking into account the cost benefit analysis. So given school districts are required to get voter approval before they can actually issue bonds to support large scale infrastructure projects, we see that it is actually important to look at what drives the bond elections and ultimately the school district financing. And so that's why we want to focus on the population turnover, or kind of a measure of how much of the local population has the short-term interest. Yeah, thank you very much.
Any questions or comments from the board on this project?
The only thing I wanted to mention was in the proposal that talked about county of residence. Wage records don't have that information in them. We don't have location-based data in those files. So while you might be able to figure out, for smaller businesses that have one location, what might be relevant in a given area, but anybody who has more than 2 locations in more than 2 counties, it's going to pick one, and it might not even be the one that they're actually located in, especially if it is a national company, somebody who has like their headquarters elsewhere. They could pick anywhere as far as their address goes.
Yeah, so the initial plan we have is rather focusing on the student, like where the student the location of the school that student goes to, and we're trying to. So that's why we call it kind of a proxy, so that instead of going through actual population turnover in the district, we hope to use some of the information in ERC data on the exact location of the school that students attend. But
Yeah,
thanks for pointing that out.
I was focusing specifically on the wage records that the proposal talked about, the elements that you were hoping to get from wage records, and it included county.
I see.
That's all.
I see. Yeah.
I mean, everybody has the same problem whenever they want to use the records for that purpose, and it may be something that someday is fixed, but for now, we just all have to work around it.
Thanks for pointing that out.
All right, if there are no other questions or comments from the board, do I have a motion to approve UTA 180 with remote access?
It's Adam, my vote to approve.
Have a second?
This is Sarah, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, moving on to proposal 3, UTA 181, differential effects of special education among students with low and high levels of disabilities in Texas. Any researchers here to give us some background?
I saw Francisco Pardo on earlier, but
Oh,
no.
I think I saw him too.
Yeah, that's his. I wonder if he's having some technical problem, but I'd seen his name before.
Francisco. Feel free to put something in the chat if you're here and you can't get through.
Oh, that's a good idea.
I'm not seeing him anymore.
I'm not either, unless some of the phone ones.
All right, we can.
Let me contact him while you
Okay,
guys go.
We can
on.
circle back
Yeah.
to proposal 3. All right, that's on hold. Right, proposal 4, UTA 182, educator retention and you teach blended learning professional development. Any researchers here to talk to us about this?
Here.
Hi.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you. Do you want me to start?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. So our study will explore how the You Teach professional development experience, individual background characteristics, organizational characteristics, and school working conditions impact retention rates for participating educators compared to like non-participating educators. And so our study is really going to examine the factors associated with teacher and administrator retention following participation in the You Teach professional development program. You Teach PD and the College of Natural Sciences is at the University of Texas at Austin, and it's a TEA approved provider for blended learning professional development. And so the purpose of our study is really to evaluate the effectiveness of the You Teach professional development program in retaining teachers and administrators. The Texas legislature has provided funding for this initiative to TEA to reimburse the school districts and open enrollment charter schools for the registration costs of completed PD coursework. And so we just want to better understand the return on investment in such PD programs. And so just to highlight some of the methods that we're going to be using, the data will be accessed through the Education Research Center. We're going to use statewide longitudinal data collected by the Texas Education Agency and the State Board of Educator certification. We're going to be using pre and post surveys administered by You Teach PD. These surveys were administered before and after the PD participation. We're also going to use participant reflections. And so these reflections describe the changes in classroom environments. Our methodology is going to be mixed methods, so we're going to incorporate both quantitative and qualitative. The main outcome of interest is educator retention. And so for our quantitative approach, we're going to examine differences in the proportion of educators from the UTeach PD cohort who were employed in Texas public education after receiving the PD and a comparison group. And for a qualitative approach, we're going to investigate educator motivation, strengths, and weaknesses when it comes to blended learning and understand what types of changes educators plan to implement. And just to highlight some of the significance of our study, benefits of Texas, the knowledge gained from this study will contribute to theory and practice in the Texas education context. There's little information about the effectiveness of professional development specific to Texas. And so our study is going to focus on our state. Second, the policy amenable factors identified by this study will help improve teacher retention rates. Research indicates that in Texas, we lose about 20% of our teachers. And lastly, our findings will be useful to researchers in Texas and beyond who study retention, mobility, and attrition, and who seek to build on these methods and findings. Any questions?
Questions or comments from the board for this project? All right, hearing none, do I have a motion to approve UTA 182 with remote access?
I motion to, this is Rodney Andrews. I motion to approve UTA 182 with remote access.
Do I have a second?
This is Kathy. I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right,
I see Francisco back on, so.
great. So let's go back to proposal 3, UTA 181. Francisco, do you want to give us some background on this?
Yes, apologies. I was connected. I just got bugged off.
No problem. We understand.
Yeah. So generally, the objective of my proposal, the main objective of my proposal, is to try to understand better how the special education affects students with different levels of disabilities. Those students with low levels of disabilities and those students with high levels of disabilities. We can imagine a scenario where the special education program has similar effects across the population of students, or would more likely can imagine one where students, as the level of disability increases, we can start seeing higher effects of the special education program. And generally what empirical work on this focuses on, and that's also my case, is you focus on the student in the margin, because that's where you can actually identify the effects, right? Just focus on the students who transition from special education to regular education or otherwise. And so you're estimating effects in that student. But in this setting, because in the last 10 years, that threshold has shifted, the threshold that is required to enter the program, one would have seen that marginal student who transitions to be one with increasingly higher levels of disability. And then as the enrollment increased again, one student whose levels of disability was decreasing. So we can actually estimate the effect for always the marginal student, but that marginal student is changing over time. So we can sort of draw the different effects of the special education program for the different levels of disability that were required to enter or transition from inside or outside the program. So that's the main idea, to have a better picture of how the function of the special education affects across the board of students. And then as a second objective, to try to see these for different subsets of the population, for different types of disability, for different at-risk populations, differences from entering or exiting the program, and so on.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
I had a question about how you were going to account for students who don't have to pass a state assessment, they just have to participate. How are you going to account for that in your analysis?
What do you mean, sorry? Who don't have to pass, who just participate? Oh, who don't take the test, the regular testing? You mean?
Right.
Yeah, no, so in the case of tests, we will look only at students, at the subset of students who take the regular tests. So for that outcome, let's say we focus on those students because you wouldn't have a comparable measure. But you can also look at attendance or disciplinary actions to have a better sense of outcomes across the whole set of students. But specifically for tests, you can only look at those subset of students that both take the regular test.
I had a similar question, and I'll just put it out there so you can think about it since you've answered Linda's question. But we do have students that are a certain group of students who take the alternate test who may represent one of your groups there, the high levels of disability that have a pervasive disability, and they take our alternate test. So you might want to think about how you can include them, because discipline and some of those other factors are likely not an issue with that group of students.
Okay, so I would imagine that as soon as the threshold becomes more strict and then you have higher disabilities, the amount of students that take the regular test would decrease, I would assume. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, there'll still be a subset of the population that still take it, but I'll have to think about how to address or see that topic.
Great. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to approve UTA 181 with remote access?
Is that a motion to approve?
This is Kathy, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you, Francisco.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving to proposal 5, UTA 183, the incidence and effects of student mobility on educational achievement and teacher mobility. Any researchers here to give us some background?
Yes, this is Mike
Great.
Villarreal. Pleasure to be with y'all. The purpose of this study is to really build on a previous study that y'all approved that allowed me to investigate the incidence of student mobility in Bexar County. This proposal takes that statewide and adds in a few more research questions examining the relationship between student mobility and effects on educational achievement as measured by performance on our state's standardized math exams. I also look at the effects of student mobility on the classmates of mobile students in this proposal, and examine the relationship between student mobility and teacher turnover. This project has been won an award from the National Science Foundation. So they will be a funding source for this project. And I'm very excited about getting to work and happy to take any questions.
All right, any questions or comments from the board?
The only thing I was going to mention, it's not a question, is if you were on earlier on proposal 2, and we were talking about wage records not having county of residence in them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
And the
I
other thing-
appreciate that. And I specifically, I kind of recognize that the only geolocation information that we'll have is the longitude and latitude of the school.
Yeah, okay. The other thing about it though is I think it also made reference to using SIC codes of the places where a person's employed. The wage records in Texas use NAICS, which you could crosswalk to, or you could just use it's an updated version of the same thing, but just so you wouldn't be surprised if the numbers didn't match what you were expecting, you know, the values in that field.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve UTA 183 with remote access?
This is Sarah. I move to approve.
Do I have a second?
It's Adam's second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you,
proposal 6, UTA 184, the causal effect of ECHS openings in Texas.
Maybe I thought that was 6. Oops. Sorry.
Oh, which one?
A minute ago, the comment I made a moment ago about wage records was I got out of.
Oh,
It's all right, Adam. I think I understood.
Yeah, I got my notes
You're
back.
talking about.
That comment was for proposal 6. Had a copy paste error on my
No problem.
bit.
it's good information for anyone using wage records, so.
Yes, but ironically, proposal 5, I don't think does use wage records.
I don't
No,
think
it doesn't.
right.
No.
Right.
Like I said, I had a copy paste error in the notes from reading the proposals.
It's okay.
All right, thanks.
All right, do you have a researcher from proposal 6 here?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm here.
Great, hi.
Okay, so thank you everyone for your time. So this proposal will focus on the causal effects of opening early college high schools in Texas. So ECHS is an innovative high school model targeting underserved students. It partners with local colleges and universities to offer all students in ECHS an opportunity to earn an associate degree or up to 2 years of college credits toward a bachelor degree during the high school at a very low or no cost. So ECHS both provide a smooth transaction from high school to college and reduce the price of post-secondary program, which are the main obstacles for underserved students to access post-secondary institution. So since 2004, Texas had led the development and implementation of innovative practices with ECHS programs. So nearly 65,000 students are served by around 200 early college high school in Texas. So this research will focus on 2 questions. First, do students attend ECHS have better outcomes? The outcomes vary from short-run high school performance to mid-run college outcomes to further long-run labor market performance. So ECHS often design a special course path for attended students. For instance, ECHS students take less high school courses, but more due credit enrolls, such that they could graduate with more college credits and an associate degree. So from this aspect, ECHS plays an important role in reducing college expenditures, alleviating information frictions, and increasing competitiveness for those underrepresented students. And my second research question is, does opening ECHS affect other traditional high school students nearby? Sometimes we call it the spillover effects of opening ECHS on traditional high school. So the outcome will also vary from high school to college outcome and labor market performance. Since ECHS openings might generate competition pressure to nearby traditional high schools, which from one side could push all schools better, but from another side could crowd out students who would have attended ECHS and be more competitive. So overall, I think from a policy perspective, this research will help to evaluate ECHS, inform ECHS expansion in Texas, and further broaden the participation of underrepresented groups in postgraduate institutions. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board on this project? I did have a question. I couldn't tell from the proposal who, I saw you requested ECHS lottery information. Is that TEA data? Or?
Yeah, no, it's like a supplement data I have to ask from each ECHS school.
Oh, from each school, okay.
Yeah.
And are you able, is work that happens in the ERCs useful without that supplemental data? Since I know you don't have that quite yet, but just wanted to know if we should be waiting to approve this until you get that data, or is there still part of this you can do without that piece?
Yes, so like I think the supplement data is only applied to the first research question. So without that, I can still do the second research question.
Thanks for that clarification. Any other questions or comments? All right, then do I have a motion to approve UT A184 with remote access?
Is that a motion to approve?
Have a second?
This is Rodney Andrews, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, proposal 7, UH 40, school closures and student outcomes. Have anyone here to give a background?
Hello, good afternoon.
Hi, welcome.
Okay, let me start. My name is Jung-Hyuk Kim, a PhD student at University of Houston. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Let me briefly summarize this project. Every year, about 100 to 200 public schools in Texas are closed, but little research has been done about school closures in Texas. So this study aims to investigate the effect of school closure on displaced students and the spillover effect on the students in neighboring schools. This project intends to help deeper understanding of school closures on student outcomes, both in the short run by examining test scores and behavior, as well as in the long run by examining outcomes such as college attendance, employment, and earnings. I believe the project will provide a valuable reference to school districts and education agencies when they encounter the school closure decisions. Then you may wonder why this project needs to use the ERC data. This is because the ERC data gives a unique opportunity to fill a gap in research on school closure by providing comprehensive data. There is no previous research on how the school closures affect student long-term outcomes, which are key concerns of policymakers and researchers. Another important question would be how this project helps education policy in Texas. Little research has been done using Texas data to see the effect of school closures, while we closed thousands of schools over the decades. So we don't know how these closures in Texas influenced student life. This project aims to review the effect and help future policy decisions related to school closures, especially in Texas. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board of this project?
Yeah, I had a question. Were you going to be taking into account the type of school?
Oh yeah, yes. Thank you for your question. I think at first I'm gonna focus on the normal elementary school first.
So some campuses are regular instructional, some provide alternative education, some are for disciplinary purposes. Are you going to take that into account?
At this point, we are not gonna use those schools first, but we are just focusing on the I don't know how do I call those kind of schools, but first I'm gonna focus on the normal not disciplinary thing schools. Am I answering your question or?
I think so.
Thank you.
This is Celeste. I had one just small comment that from the looks of your proposal, you're wanting to link students to teachers. Is that correct?
Yes.
Then you will also need to request course complete.
Okay. Thank you for comments. Yeah. Course complete.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Right, then do I have a motion to approve UH 40 with remote access with the amendment of the additional data request?
I move to approve with the access and the additional course complete data.
Have a second?
This is
That my second.
a second. Oh,
Oh, doubled.
It's great, yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, proposal 8. Sweet. UH 41, the role of middle schools in Texas high school endorsement trajectory. Any background for this one?
Hi, everybody. This is Tony Templeton. I'm one of the researchers on the project. Many of you are familiar with the recent shift of the Texas high school graduation plans to the endorsements under the Foundation High School program. And while we are going to build on current work that's going on from our colleagues at AIR to examine the effects of the endorsement selection through high school and beyond, what we want to do is take a look back and see if there are any antecedent characteristics that might have influenced the choice of a middle school student as they select their endorsement going into high school. So we were just interested in just taking a different perspective on exploring how the implementation of the Foundation High Schools program has been implemented.
Any questions or comments from the board on this project? All right, do I have a motion to approve UH 41 with remote access?
I move to approve.
I'll second Celeste.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, moving to proposal 9, UTD 159, the effects of special education on crime, resubmission of UTD 156. Have anyone to give us some discussion of what's been updated?
Sure. Hi, this is Caitlin Heath. I'm one of the researchers on this project. I'd be happy to give like a brief summary of our kind of revised proposal. In this project, we want to look at the link between special education monitoring and interactions with the criminal justice system. So we want to use a policy change that held districts accountable for improving the effectiveness of special education and look at how that changed the way that special education services were delivered in schools. So districts may have responded in several ways, such as changing teacher-student ratios, spending, disciplinary policies, classroom setting, or testing accommodations. And ultimately, our goal with this work is to learn what changes districts made to improve students' outcomes with respect to crime in order to identify best practices for districts to implement to help improve special ed delivery and crime outcomes. And we think that crime is a really important outcome. Ex-offenders have a very difficult time finding jobs and face many barriers in life. And school and district policies can help mitigate the negative outcomes of crime for youth who are at risk, as education plays such an important role in helping children develop into successful and healthy adults. And so I'm happy to answer any questions or address anything else about the proposal.
Great, questions and comments from the board. Okay, I had one note about a statement in the proposal that clarifies that the supplemental data, that the researchers will not have access to the PII and supplemental data while they have access to the ERC data. How is that happening? Would it be just shared with TEA or THECB for linking, or do you all have access to that data?
Oh, so we have access to the adult criminal conviction data from the Texas Department of Public Safety, which has personal identifiers. But in order to get it merged into the ERC, we could share with TEA or THECB for them to do the merging, so that we as researchers never have access to that protected personal identification information in the ERC end.
Okay. I suggest we just add something to the proposal that just specifies that researchers will not, that you all won't have access to the PII while you're working on the ERC data. So there's no
absolutely
possibility of linking. So that's
yep.
my suggestion. Great.
Perfect.
Any other questions or comments from others on the board? Okay, then do I have a motion to approve UTD 159 with remote access with the addition of language about the supplemental data?
This is Celeste. I move to approve proposal for UTD 159 for remote access, and for the proposal with the added language regarding no access to identified data.
A second.
Adam, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you.
All right, well, we are cruising right through onto our next to final agenda item, discussion of board operating procedures. So after our discussion last meeting, where we discussed some of the things we would like to address to revise and tighten in the board operating procedures, we will focus first on two things, and I think probably the best way to do that is to form some work groups, groups smaller than a quorum. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Nothing decided today is binding. We're not voting on anything. This is just a discussion of how to make some work groups. The first work group or project to talk about is focusing on the additional data request and project extensions. So both of these are the things we usually start our meetings off with. And we need a group to help standardize those forms a bit, and also possibly look at the current procedures we have for those. I think the ultimate goal would be if we get those in a state where it's very simple and easy for the board members to see all the information they need in the actual proposal or the forms that are being brought forward. We could possibly move to a consent calendar model where those could be all approved on consent, unless, of course, anyone wants to discuss it. But last time we discussed how there were just some key pieces, especially on the extensions, that if we had a few more pieces of information on these forms, it would be easier for people to feel comfortable just approving some of those. So that's the first work group I propose we put together, having to do with the additional data request and extension forms and policies. The second work group I suggest is discussing supplemental data policies. So some of that can be between, coordinating board and TEA can work out what is necessary for the agencies to be able to match correctly, but what are the ERC board's policies on what is expected for when a researcher comes to us, wants to get a proposal approved, but is also bringing in supplemental data? Do we expect them to to be ready, the data is ready to go, or is it okay for them to not quite be approved yet? These are the things we need to discuss. So any thoughts on this? My suggestion is these two work groups, one having to do with the forms, the other having to do with supplemental data policy. And then ultimately with work groups, they meet and then any decision is still made by the whole board. We'll still vote on it, but the idea being it would be a little more efficient to meet with smaller groups to get the ideas flowing. Any thoughts about this approach before we take volunteers for things?
Well, does it need to be made up of voting members, or since it's a work group, can it be staff at the agencies working together to put together proposals and bring to the voting body?
I think it can be both, but we would like some voting members to be there to ensure we're on the right track. But it is possible, I did check with our general counsel, and we can have staff on these and they won't count toward the quorum. But it cannot be among, there can't be more than 4 voting members on either one of those. Yeah.
So with regards to the supplemental data, Melissa, what do you think are the pressing issues?
Others feel free to chime in, but one thing I think that has come up in the past is, what do we expect on the board? How far do we expect a researcher to be in their process of having approval from another agency or another group to have access to that data? Do we need them to write something regarding the fact that if they're not fully approved, is it still necessary for them to have access to the ERC data? Can they still do a project without that? Or do we need to wait? If it really hinges on the supplemental data being there, then should we even be voting on it before we know that's there? So these things, I think, just what needs to be in place.
I think procedurally, it's useful because oftentimes when dealing with other entities that have secure data, they want to talk about the process via which the data will be transmitted, how it will be merged, and how it will be secured. And to be clear, at the ERCs, we sort of play a role in that at the beginning, because we initiate, we put forth the proposals, and at the end, when we provide the researchers with access to the merged data, given the provisions of not having a copy, basically being able to open the merged data and the supplemental data side by side once we made accounted for that. But we found that those other entities don't want to talk to us because we're not the, sort of the key. We don't make decisions. We're not actually implementing the merge. And so how do we, if researchers need to have, like outside entities communicate with either of the agencies, can we sort of build some sort of process that allows them to do so efficiently, rather than us saying, here's a procedure, here's what we do, and your concerns are probably not with what we do. So I think that's a concern that I've seen emerge several times when we've had projects with supplemental data. I don't want to put any
I think that makes sense.
burden on you, but it does come up.
No, I think that makes sense. And the better we can have, the better, or the clearer it is on the ERC board side of what we need to be able to say, to confidently say yay or nay to a project, I think the better the agencies can work on. I think it'll be iterative, right? The agencies can provide some more information, and then we, of course, are in close contact with TEA always. So, but I think we can work together on this. My suggestion for this work group would be, having me, maybe someone else from THECB, Linda Rosca or someone else from your team on this, but then also at least one person from a ERC site to help us with exactly what Rodney's bringing up.
And I was going to add to what Rodney said, because I agree. A lot of times people just want us to describe what gets done, what they have to ask for in their data, and then what gets done. And, you know, maybe that would be helpful just to have written down. And I mean, we could put it on our website too, because many times I get calls and I just have to, you know, say what I know about the process.
But I mean, realistically, it seems like it's a three-way conversation between the researcher, the ERC itself, not this board, but which ERC is working with it, because they're the ones who are going to have to connect, you know, the data, and whoever owns this other data that's, you know, supplemental data that we're trying to bring in or merge. Like if they can agree to, the three of them can agree to do it within certain parameters or context that, you know, we describe as far as what we're, you know, what's permitted, then at that point it can come to us for, you know, approval or whatnot. And instead of us, because the other way to do it is we get a preliminary proposal, we say conceptually we don't have a problem with this, but now you need to go out and get the, you know, you need to go out and get the work it out with this third party. Meanwhile, we've already approved it and the clock is ticking. And more importantly, back to the question that I think, Melissa, you may have asked, which was, well, what happens if turns out you can't secure that extra data? Do you need access to ERC? Do you have a project it's not as good, but it still does something? And so it seems like if we wait to find out what kind of agreement can be brought together between, you know, the players and make that the package, it works probably better for all of us. But that's just my perspective as, you know, on here. I'm not an ERC. It's easy for me to write a check saying that they should work with the researcher and the third party.
Well, so who volunteers to be on this work group?
I do.
Great, thank you, Linda. And I also volunteer. Anyone from an ERC site want to jump in?
Volunteer.
Neat, great, thank you.
I don't necessarily need to be on the committee, but we have a supplemental data agreement that people have to sign that states that they can't see the identified data at the same time, all of that. So I don't know if that'd be helpful.
Absolutely. I think it would be great to start with what we have.
Yeah, I can volunteer to be on the subcommittee Celeste is referencing around. Oh, this is not about supplemental. I was going to volunteer to be on the other subcommittee.
Okay, then let's write it down before you
working group.
Great. So the other work group / subcommittee is the one that's focusing on the forms / policies for extending project dates or adding additional data sets. So Kathy, I hear you saying you're willing to be on that.
Yes.
Anyone else?
I'm fine with being on one or both, either one.
Okay. And I will be on this. I'm happy to be on this one too.
I think I and Trey Miller who's also involved in the ERC program, would also like to be involved because these are issues, you know, that we all confront, and so
Absolutely.
I think we want to sort of contribute to a solution that is as efficient and as effective as possible.
This is great. I appreciate it. And remember, no decisions will be made without everyone seeing everything, but I appreciate having some smaller groups to get things moving. We will write this up and send it out in the minutes for this, so everyone knows where we are. And then I'm happy to get the ball rolling with getting these two groups together and conversation started. And we might be, as Celeste said, I know several of you have forms already that you use, and I think it probably will be really useful to pull all those together for each of the separate conversations to to have in front of us. Here's what we have. Based on what we have, what do we think we're missing? How can we make this more straightforward for everyone involved? Any other thoughts, comments for this? I appreciate everyone's willingness to discuss and be part of it.
I think these are both areas that would benefit from some revisiting. There's surely ways that we can streamline and the whole process around additional data and extensions. Like those usually take seconds to read through, right, when we're doing it. So if it's that fast for us to individually review it, seems like there's a fast track opportunity there. But I'll tell you, the thing that would be, to me, in both of these places around, not just forms, procedures, but if we have any kind of business rules or policies that we want to apply in terms of, generally, we would expect, generally, if you're looking for your second extension, there's some, greater standard to go with on that maybe, or certain types of supplemental data requests we can't approve because, we believe the risk of re-identification is too great or something like that. That would be helpful also for, again, people coming to the system, knowing what to expect. And then we've got something we can not just point to, but be more consistent with.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm glad these are up. Thank you.
Great.
Especially around the policy of extensions when some of the research products are out for review, and to some extent it is out of the PI's control as to when they'll get a response or revise and resubmit. And I think we run into that issue often with projects. So, some language, that both ensures that a project is finite, but also allows some latitude for a researcher to navigate the publication process that's formalized is sort of greatly appreciated. To build off Adam's point, I think now we're sort of on a case-by-case basis, and it will be useful to have some structure that allows us some latitude when those sort of events occur.
Yeah, I did a fair amount of thinking about the extensions because during the pandemic, especially at first, I was, seeing these extensions coming. It's like, this is the third extension for someone. And then you just go, yeah, but there's no remote access and the pandemic's here. So yeah, that makes total sense why they didn't complete it, as fast as they thought they would last time. But we do have remote access now and other things. But to your point, Rodney, it is the big black box in this whole thing is the publication, right? It's getting somebody to review and provide feedback, and ideally to bless, some version of your paper to get it published. So we'll definitely kind of differentiate there.
Excellent.
Great. I appreciate the thoughts, and we will move forward. But anything else anyone wants to say before we move to our last agenda item, which is adjournment? All right, we really rolled through these today. So great. It was good to see everybody. Thank you all for your hard work on this. We always appreciate your time. And we will be in touch. So we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.